Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist in Las Vegas and Joe Mac in New York. Joe, I heard you had a great week. Give me a recap of what you did.
It was a blockbuster week. Yes, thanks, Jim. We really cleaned up. NFL, we wound up having two dogs that got under the number. Obviously, anyone that watched the Falcons-Cowboys wild game knows the Falcons should have come out with a win. I mean, you don't get out to 20-0 leads and then blow it, but still, we took the points. It got whittled down to 2.5 points at game time, but we still got the cover with the Falcons. And we came back from 17-0 down to get the cover with the Giants. They were taking 4.5 at Windy Soldier Field against the Bears that day. Got some lucky breaks. The Bears missed a 50-yard field goal with a couple of minutes left that would have given them the touchdown lead, and we wound up with the win there with the Giants, with the cover. And then Monday night, a relatively easy overplay in the Saints game against the Raiders in Las Vegas. So big NFL weekend, and the colleges we did pretty good too. Lost a tough one with Wake Forest in a high-scoring game with NC State, but we had a big comeback win with Louisiana Tech and a nice, really wire-to-wire win with the Miami Hurricanes. So monster weekend, and going to have a lot more for the folks out there. All they got to do is call the Jim Hurley Network. They can check it out. Check out the website, jimhurley.com. 1-800-323-4453 is the toll-free number. Jim Hurley Network off to a great start. First couple of weeks here in college and the pros. 1-800-323-4453.
Well, I'm glad you had a good weekend. I did as well. The pros were incredible. You hate if you pound your chest too much, you know it's going to come back and bite you. But I have to tell everybody, like we have to do. We have to promote ourselves in this business. I was 8-1 in the pros last week, and the only game I lost was the Eagles, and I'm a little surprised at how bad they are. They sure look bad. Wentz looks awful. I'm not sure if they're still drinking the Kool-Aid from the Super Bowl win years ago, but they just don't look good, and I was really surprised that the Rams traveled east and looked as good as they did. And the Rams, of course, are still on the East Coast, and now they go to Buffalo. Much different team, and it's you talked a little bit. So much to talk about. It's so exciting to have sports back. Even baseball, we're heading into their playoffs. Starting next week, and this last week is a little rough because some of the teams don't even care right now because they're in, but. This is exciting. And then the NBA, we saw Denver come back on the Lakers last night. And I don't know, Denver just has 99 lives, not 9 lives, but 99, and they just keep winning when they're down. You put them down 2 games, they're going to win. It's just automatic. So it's been great having sports back. Thank God this isn't a political show. We don't have to talk about politics. We don't have to talk about the pandemic, but all that stuff is out there. It's a rocky time, but sports sure takes the edge off of it, Joe.
It's no question about it, Jim. You're 100% right. I mean, think back about 4 or 5 months ago. We had no sports. We had baseball in labor issues where they could have come back, and then because they had problems between management and the players, they couldn't get their contract stuff right. I mean, you know what? None of us are silly enough to say this is going to be clear sailing. We've seen what it's been like. I mean, baseball's had to postpone some 40-something games. They're trying to make up every one of them if they can because of the COVID. And we see with college football, lots of postponements, lots of teams pushing back games a week. But let's face it, this is a really exciting week in college football. You've got the SEC coming back. That means 7 games. Okay, a couple of them are big lopsided point spreads. Alabama's laying almost 4 TDs against Missouri. Georgia's laying about the same price, 26, 27 points against Arkansas. But when you really look at it, it's really a real jolt to the system that the SEC is back. And again, we know the Big Ten will be coming back in October. So what started out as kind of slowish types of weeks, and you and I have both done great so far out of the gate in college and the pros, but it's nice to have the power conference teams coming out in a surge like this. I mean, let's face it, the first couple of weeks of college football, okay, there were some nice games and everything, but they weren't total marquee games. And not to diminish anyone, but like in this neck of the woods here, we got Appalachian State Marshall as the prime game, 3:30 Eastern Time last Saturday. Let's be honest, that's not the kind of game you normally get. You're going to get a Big Ten or a Pac-12 or a Big 12 team in that time slot. So, it's great that we're getting these other power leagues back. Everyone can just see it in the numbers. I mean, I think there were 19 or 20 games on the board in college last weekend. There's going to be 34 or 35 this weekend. So it is. It's great to have them all back. And it looks like by hook or by crook, they're going to try to get through this season in college. And the NFL, they're steamrolling their way right through the schedule here. They haven't missed a bit. Let's hope it continues with that, and we can get a lot of entertainment and a lot of winners out there. It'll be a blast the rest of the way.
Well, let's look at a couple of these games we got coming up in the pros. You get the Rams, and I mentioned it. The Rams are on the East Coast again. They did fly home, and now they have to fly back and go to Buffalo. Both teams are 2-0. The quarterbacks on both sides are red hot. You got a defensive coach more so on the Buffalo side, and both of the offenses are rolling right now. We still don't know what we're seeing because of the quality of their opposition and the situations, and every situation is different. And it's still new, and there's lots of injuries out there, more so than any, probably because they weren't in the kind of condition they should have been in to start the season anyway. But Buffalo is going to host the Rams this week. I'm looking for these quarterbacks to just take off. I don't see low-scoring games anywhere in this league right now.
Right. Yeah, I see a total price of 47.5 right now, which, at first glance you might think looks a little high, but let's face it, the Bills are rocking and rolling right now. I mean, we talked about their Week 1 game against the Jets. They certainly could have scored more points than they did, but the quarterback, Josh Allen, had 2 red zone fumbles. But that's about the only criticism you can have of this kid, the old Wyoming quarterback. I mean, he is really on target. He's had an instant rapport with his new wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, and the Bills look like they're potent. I mean, Allen threw for over 400 yards in last week's game in Miami. He's playing with a lot of moxie, a lot of confidence right now. And as you said, the Bills, you would think with the head coach McDermott, a little more defensive-minded. They've been a little sloppy, or they at least were against Miami last week. They let the Dolphins and Fitzpatrick move the ball a little bit better on them than they would have thought. Maybe they tighten things up here, but I'll tell you what, the Rams look sharp too. I mean, again, they could have scored more points in the Week 1 game against Dallas. They had just a couple of long drives that didn't produce a whole lot, but I mean, they were impressive last week. We can knock the Eagles, and you're right. I mean, the Eagles haven't looked good, but the Rams look really good. Off play action, they're making big plays. I tell you right now, the tight end Higbee, he scored 3 touchdowns. I mean, he looks like another Travis Kelce type player. So the Rams are dangerous. Both these teams quite capable of scoring 30 points in this game, and the number may go up even a little bit more. I'm a little surprised that the Bills are less than a field goal here. I figured for sure they'd be 3.5, 4. But, I'm starting to notice, and maybe I'm wrong about it, but, without fans in the stands, except for a couple of places, Dallas had some fans, and Miami had some fans in the stands, obviously a small portion of what they can fill. I don't think the home field is getting as much bounce as it used to be, at least in the line. I could be wrong, but to me, this game should be 3.5, sit right there, maybe 3. So, if you look at it here, you got a Bills team that's shown a lot of explosiveness early on, and they certainly have. I mean, not only Stephon Diggs, but Allen is spreading the ball around pretty good. Cole Beasley's made some big plays. So all signs to me point to a high-scoring game. I'm a little leery of the price there, but we'll see how it pans out as we head towards Sunday.
Well, as far as home field, the old standard was 3 points to home field, except for a couple teams, which might be 4 or even higher because of the advantage. Like Seattle used to be a very strong home field. But without fans, it does make a difference. it does lack the motivation, and it does not interfere with the road team calling their plays when the noise gets too high. So most of the odds makers I talk to are trying to use like 1.5 for home field advantage instead of the 3 as a standard. And there might be, you might see a little bit change over time as we maybe start adding. Well, if the pandemic doesn't get worse, and unfortunately it seems to be in some states, we might start seeing fans, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I can't predict that. We go from Buffalo. We can look at so many different teams. We got the Thursday night game, which is kind of a ratings mess with Miami against Jacksonville, but you do have an interesting. What's the battle of the facial hair, the beard against the mustache, which is now that's the big debate. Who do you like? You like the beard or you like the mustache? I'm not going to get into that, but that should be a fun game. I mean, everybody knows those two teams aren't going anywhere fast, but it should be a fun game to watch. And of course, you have the baseball and the basketball at the same time. Is there any other games on the sheet that you really can look at? I mean, let's bring up one of the issues. You got Tampa Bay with Brady. Of course, now Brady goes from the Patriots, or is there like, I don't know, 17 to 20 years. I don't know the exact number.
Right.
Did better in game 2 than he did in game 1. The chemistry is there. Strange, the question is, can Brady, who's in football parlance, he's an old dog, and you got Arians, who's an old dog, and Arians doesn't seem to mind criticizing Brady, which that didn't happen very much in New England. And, they got 3 it's a very strange situation. They got a lot of weapons on that offense. Now, you look at that and you say, darn, that might be, get down 4 or 5 games when the chemistry starts to build. They might really start to turn it on. Interesting, they have 3 great tight ends on that team. They're not throwing to them. And that is really interesting because in old Brady, which, been around a while, he always used Gronkowski. The tight end was always big with their offense, but it doesn't seem to be now. So they're going out to Denver. Denver's short of a starting quarterback. They got Driscoll in there. I think they're going to sign Bortles as a backup. Interesting matchup. Brady up there against Denver in the Mile High Stadium. Interesting situation.
It is. You're right. I thought about that too. I mean, they've got really a plethora of tight ends to throw to, and he really hasn't targeted them much. You would figure things are going to get a little smoother as time goes on. Obviously, he knows Gronk. They know each other inside out. But, they've got O.J. Howard. That, to me, this is the guy that should be getting a handful of targets every game. Interesting, last week, obviously, how they front-doored. They had the big lead against Carolina. The Panthers fought back, got under the number there for a couple of minutes, and then just trying to kill the clock, basically, Leonard Fournette with the big run. I think that's a big key for this game and for this team. Is Leonard Fournette going to be a guy they can count on and give them that offensive balance, give them that running back? I know they like Ronald Jones and everything, but can they be a team that gets 150 yards rushing and keeps a little heat off of Brady? And then as time goes on, I'm sure even if Brady's arm strength isn't what it was, he's going to get a little more acclimated to the other guys. We saw it from week 1 to week 2. Now, Mike Evans had some hamstring problems week 1. He was really a non-factor. He had a much bigger game last week. And as you said, it's a big test here for the Broncos. I mean, they lost a heartbreaker game against Tennessee. I mean, they were hanging in there because of all the missed field goals for Tennessee that night. And then last week, the Broncos wound up playing in Pittsburgh. They played a tough, hard game without, for much of it without their quarterback, Drew Lock. But to me, you and I have talked about it, Jim. We're not big Vic Fangio fans. As a head coach, maybe as a defensive coordinator, he's fine. Maybe he's a B-plus type of guy as a D coordinator. But as a head coach, he makes a lot of wrong moves. It's a tough spot here. I don't trust Driscoll. He took a sack to end the game the other day. Got to throw the ball away. But I think the Bucs, the arrow's pointing up. They're going to get better. I think you're going to see a little bit better distribution with Brady and everybody. And like I said, I think a big key is Leonard Fournette. I know they like the other kid at running back, but I think if Fournette can give them a 100-yard game here and there, they're going to be really tough to deal with because, let's face it, that NFC South, I don't want to say it's falling apart, but the Saints certainly don't look like the team that we know from the last couple of years. Maybe it's because of Michael Thomas being out at wide receiver. The Saints just don't look the same. And the Panthers, they're rebuilding. And the Falcons, well, let's face it, they find ways. They invent ways to lose games. So the Bucs might wind up having a 11, 12-win season when it's all done. And right now it's a little bit of growing pains, but Brady and company, I think, should be fine in the long run.
Well, this week they have an easier game. Talking about the NFC South, they have an easier game going up against Denver than the Saints have going against the Packers because the Packers granted they played Minnesota and Detroit, but Aaron Rodgers seems to be on a mission, and of course he is one of the best quarterbacks in football and has been for the last decade. He might have had an off year here or there, but they did win, 13 games last year? I mean, it's not chicken feed. They lost 2 big games.
13 wins last year, and they really didn't get much respect for it. And I think that's giving them a bit of a chip on the shoulder this year, Jim. I really think going into the season, the Packers felt a little disrespected. Granted, they got pushed around in the NFC title game last year in San Francisco. They got beat bad, but, hey, they were a 13-win team, a quality team, and Rodgers, let's face it, he got hyped up in the offseason. When they drafted Jordan Love, even though it looks like he's going to be a long-range project for the Pack, I mean, that annoyed Rodgers, you could tell. And he's off to a monstrous start right now. And, hey, the Packers, they could easily go into New Orleans. With the way the Saints are kind of frittering around on offense these days, the Pack could go down there as a small dog and wipe them up here, too. It could happen Sunday night.
We all come to the end of our careers, and we have to start looking at Drew Brees as maybe reaching that point. I'm not going to say he's done, but there's a difference in the way he's playing. The short passes, the lack of arm strength is starting to show up. But yet again, got to remember there were no preseason games, no OTAs, and that may change. I mean, he might, I don't know. He's been a great athlete for a long time and a great quarterback. And I'm not going to write him off, but the signs are there that there might be a problem. But I'm not going to throw dirt on him yet. But it's starting to look now. When you talk about the Raiders and the Saints last week, the Raiders put on a great show. I'm happy for that because that's our team here in Las Vegas now. Not that I'm a homie, never have been, but I did have the Raiders and over in that game, so I picked up 2 wins there. But now the Raiders, off a Monday night game, have to travel east and go to play the Patriots. And I think the Patriots might be the biggest story of the year so far. Nobody wanted Cam Newton. He was on the trash pile. Nobody was calling him. Nobody was offering him anything. And all of a sudden, Bill Belichick comes along and says, hey, that's a gold mine over there. Let's go get him. We're going to retool their offense. And I'm going to tell you something. I could not be more impressed, unless you're talking about Russell Wilson, with a quarterback in the NFL right now. His arm strength, his accuracy, of course he's huge. He's like 6'5", 240, 250. You don't want to tackle him. He's so big, and he's quick, fast. And that Patriot team looks very scary right now.
I would agree with it. You know what's funny? He has gotten an instant connection with Edelman, who, over the years, everybody, made the connection of Brady to Edelman and how special they were, and especially in big games. But let's face it, Edelman is a superstar player in his own right, and he and Newton picked up right where Brady and Edelman were. Plus, Newton looks like he's not afraid, obviously, to run it, although I hated that last play of the game because, to me, they almost telegraphed it when he got stopped at the goal line. But Newton's not afraid to run it. Like you said, his shoulder seems like it's gotten better. He's throwing much more accurately. And he looks like, as you can see, he's got the second-year receiver, Harry, looks like he and Harry might have a nice little vibe going. So The Patriots are a nice little story. They did a couple of things strange the other night. I thought they went for a 2-point conversion at a time of the game where they didn't need to. There were some times where they just obviously couldn't bottle up Russell Wilson, and that's going to happen. And Stephon Gilmore got picked on once or twice, which was a little bit of a surprise. But overall, I'm with you. The Patriots, I thought going in, were going to be a 10-win team, a playoff team. And depending on their head-to-head matchups with the 2 games they play with the Bills, I kind of figured, hey, if they get a split with the Bills, they can win the division. If they can sweep the Bills, maybe they can win the AFCs. But that's looking down the road. Right now, we're looking at this game Sunday. They got John Gruden and the Las Vegas Raiders coming in there. It's a very, you'd think, action-packed type of game. Really impressed with what the Raiders were doing the other day. And one of the subtleties of the game, I think Gruden pointed out afterwards, David Carr, a lot of good audibles at the line of scrimmage, got him in and out of different plays, got a lot of times where he caught the Saints a little napping. And right now, hey, the Raiders are a nice story themselves, certainly. A win and a cover in Carolina, a big win to christen the new stadium the other night. You know what? The Raiders are a team that we got to keep an eye on. Every year we seem to hear about them, and they seem to, somehow fritter away their season. But, hey, 2-0 start, going into the Patriots, and the Patriots coming off an emotional, physical game. We'll see. We'll see if that's upset alert for Sunday in Foxborough.
You got 3 West Coast teams heading east this week, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Raiders. They're all playing on the East Coast, early starts. Typically not a great situation. And the interesting part is the Rams and the Niners played on the East Coast last week. So I think the Niners were going to head home, but they had some equipment problems. They ended up in West Virginia for the week. So that saved them a little travel. But, with the COVID regulations and restrictions and stuff, everybody's having problems this year. But that is a scheduling disadvantage, and then you take the Raiders off a short week, hold on. That's what happens when you have work at home. That's enough. That's what happens when you work at home, when you have dogs.
I got you.
And I'm sitting with everybody. Enjoy this because this is what it's like during the pandemic. And we have a little break here. I'll be right with you.
Okay.
That's enough. Enough! Go lay down. Joe, are you there?
I'm here, Jim.
Okay, well, we'll try to continue here. Okay, where were we?
You were talking about the 3 West Coast teams heading east. I was going to just jump in a minute and talk about the Niners when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Interesting, as you said, you've got these West Coast teams traveling east, and the 49ers actually are playing in the same building, which is probably bad news for them, as everyone knows by now. San Fran head coach Kyle Shanahan and the whole organization really unhappy with the field conditions at the Meadowlands. They had season-ending injuries to 2 defensive linemen, Bosa and Thomas, and they've Garoppolo, the quarterback, he suffered a high ankle sprain. The funny thing is, nobody complained week 1 when the Giants played a Monday night game against Pittsburgh. There were no talk of it here in this area, no comments about a bad surface. They did put down a whole new artificial surface this summer. Supposedly, it got the seal of approval from the NFL in early September, and they went out and played. Now, the Niners had all those devastating injuries last week. Now they got to go back to the same building to play the Jets. They're not a happy team right now. I don't know how that's going to play out in terms of the game. Obviously, they're going with a backup quarterback now in Mullins. He's going to take over for Garoppolo for a while. But it's interesting, as you talked about, Jim, you've got West Coast, a lot of West Coast, East Coast this year because of the way the non-conference games are going. But here you got a case where the Niners are coming right back into the same building where 4 of their players suffered pretty serious injuries last week. So we're going to see survival of the fittest. If they've got some problems here, if they change their shoes, whatever they do, they've got to do something different because it was really it was kind of Armageddon for the Niners. Even though they won easily 31-13, it was never close. They beat up on a talentless Jet team. But, boy, those injuries, they could come back and haunt the Niners all year long.
Yeah, it looks that way. And, I mean, they do. It's almost like that loser of the Super Bowl jinx that everybody talks about, and that seems to be the case. Now, Mullen is a pretty good quarterback, and I don't know that if he's not equal to Garoppolo because I've seen him play before, and he's very impressive. And I think the head coach there actually likes him quite a bit. So I'm not looking for that. It comes down to blocking and tackling, and, it still comes down to whether the Giants can play football at a higher level. I think they can. I think they're going to get better as time goes on. Yeah, they lost the running back, but they just picked up Freeman, I think. He was a free agent, came out of Atlanta, and he's a quality back.
Yeah, no, he seemed to have lost a step or two in the 18 and 19 seasons, but I think that was a good signing by the Giants. They certainly need some versatility out of the backfield. They really didn't have much depth, and in kind of a strange move. I mean, normally you wouldn't think about like who's backing up Barkley or whoever, but they did not even dress Wayne Gallman the other day, who I like as a running back, but the Giants, I hear, are down on him. So they reached out and they got Devonta Freeman, the old Falcon running back, and he should give them a little bit of a charge here. I tell you, the Giants, they're looking a little more organized under Joe Judge. I liked the way he called his timeouts late, little things like that. I'm impressed with some of the things I'm seeing right now. Their problem is they don't have a whole heck of a lot of talent in certain spots. Their offensive line is still needing, they need a little fine-tuning. And I tell you, the biggest problem is they just can't keep their playmakers healthy. I mean, Daniel Jones, the quarterback, never seems to have a game where he's got everybody available. And this week, he's going to go into that game against the 49ers without Barkley, without Sterling Shepard, their receiver, who got hurt. He hurt his toe last week. He did throw the ball to Ingram a bit, the tight end, which was nice, six catches for Ingram and some big plays. But the Giants are a little short-handed, too, so both these teams are knowing what it's like early in the season to be suffering injuries. And like I said, I'm going to really be paying attention to how this turf plays out there, because I'll tell you, years ago, the Meadowlands Stadium was just a disaster. They had all kinds of problems with the turf. They put in a new surface. You haven't heard any problems, but now it's back. It's more problems, so it's something for folks to pay attention to, unfortunately.
We saw that Atlanta just does this. They get the big lead. You go back to the Super Bowl 28-3 halftime. Last week, they got Dallas down real good. I can't believe that head coach still has a job. I just can't believe it.
Oh, it's shocking. And listen, I know they've been kicked while they've been down this whole week, the Falcons. But, Jim, somebody's got to tell me. You're in the NFL. How do you play on special teams and not know what the rules are? I mean, the ball is kicked. Fall on it. I mean, what do you watch? 4 guys are standing there watching it roll for 10 yards, and then Dallas jumps on it. I mean, how do you go out there and not know the rules? How do you have special team guys?
Joe,
you got your hands team out there. It's crazy.
Joe, haven't these guys all played football in high school and college? And I mean, there's the same rules, right?
Yeah. No, but you touched on the coach, Quinn. I mean, it's surprising that he still has a job. Okay, the Super Bowl collapse was awful. It's going to stay with him forever. I mean, it's going to be in the first line of his obituary. We know that. But the last couple of years, they've been slow starting teams that show a little life in the second half of the year. But I mean, you can't just you can't just blow games like this. I mean, I wrote it in a column for Jim Hurley Network this week. I don't know the last time I heard a team that had a 20-point or larger lead after the first quarter losing a game in the NFL. I mean, it happens in the NBA, but I don't remember it happening in the NFL. And you just can't do that. I mean, even the kooky things that he does. I mean, they're up 26-3, I think it was, or 26-7, and he goes for two after a touchdown. I mean, you're in the second quarter. What are you doing? Kick the point. Let's see how it all plays out. Then McCarthy for Dallas, he goes for two when he's down 39-30, which makes absolutely no sense, because if you don't make it, you're down 2 scores. He doesn't get it, but life had a way of coming back for him. I mean, he had a couple of faked punts that didn't work, some turnovers, and a dopey decision on that 2-point play. So those weren't two Einsteins on the sideline last weekend in Dallas. But I'll tell you what, Dan Quinn, him and his team, they find more ways to lose. I could point out the last couple of years, the Falcons could have had 3 or 4 more wins than they did in each of the last 2 years. They just find ways to blow games, and they're off and running this year.
That seems to be a city that's cursed. I mean, Atlanta just can't get it together, whether it's basketball, baseball, football. It's just baseball, they have a pretty good team this year in baseball, but looking at the other side of that, Dallas, that was a big win for Dallas to come back. Dak looked good when they let him play and throw and run, kind of like they took the chains off of him and let him be Dak. He's a pretty good athlete, by the way, and now they're going to go up to Seattle, and we saw what Seattle did last week. Seattle doesn't look like they have a very good defense. They do have Russell Wilson. Their offense is dynamic. Pete Carroll is a good coach, but boy, I'll tell you, he can make some bonehead moves as well. And going for a long bomb when it was 3rd and 1, and they could have closed out the game. I don't understand that call. But then I go back to the Super Bowl when they threw the pass instead of giving it to Marshawn Lynch. I can't understand. But Carroll makes some weird calls, and that's something you have to overcome with him.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, that was a game the Seahawks, they shouldn't have had to sweat it out the way they did, and then, happen to make the goal line stand. But you're right. I mean, let's face it, that Legion of Boom is long gone now. Their secondary can be thrown on. And let's face it, Prescott has some talent there. This rookie looks like he's a keeper, C.D. Lamb. I know it's early, but he already had a 100-yard game. Obviously, Amari Cooper, he made a spectacular catch in that game. And they got this other guy, Schultz, already, who's off to a good start. So they look like a team that they can chuck around the yard. I mean, they didn't really get all that much from Zeke last weekend. I think he ran for 89 yards on 22 or 23 carries, so not a monster game from him. Dak's doing a little bit more. I think he's being asked to do a little bit more under McCarthy, and he's got skill. He's got skill out there. Now, that offensive line that forever is being praised is not nearly what it was 2-3 years ago. It's just not. I mean, their overall machine-like precision of 2-3 years ago was as good as I've seen offensive line going back 30, 40 years. They're not what they were, but in some ways that's making Dak a better player. He's kind of improvising more, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does, because you would think even though the Seahawks defense has taken a couple of steps back, Carroll's going to have a couple little tricky things to throw Dak's way. So this is a really fun game to check out on Sunday. It's the main game on Fox at 4:25 Eastern Time. And like you said, Jim, the Cowboys, they saved their season. I know that sounds dramatic, but if they lose that game, they're 0-2 going out there. I mean, I think you can count on one hand how many teams in NFL history have started the season 0-3 and made the playoffs. So monster win for the Cowboys, greatly aided by Dan Quinn and a special teams unit that had no clue. And it sets up for a really exciting and fun game Sunday in Seattle between the Cowboys and the Seahawks.
Well, I agree with it. It's going to be a monster game. Seattle is, they played well. Russell Wilson is amazing, but they have holes in that franchise as well. But when you say Dak and the Cowboys saved their season, I kind of disagree, and I'm going to say why. I think Philadelphia is a train wreck. The Giants aren't ready to really move up, and Washington neither. So the Dallas is in a perfect position this year to even win the NFC East. They could be 7-9 and win the NFC East. That's how bad that division is. And you get some divisions like Seattle's in, that's a whole different story. You got the Rams, 49ers, Cardinals. That's a whole different story. All 4 teams are dangerous.
No, you're right. You're right. You can't afford losses if you're in the NFC West. You can in the NFC East. You're right. I guess I have a little more faith in the Eagles going forward. I don't know why. I mean, they were terrible last week, but I have a gut feeling they're going to rebound a little bit this season. But I understand what you're saying with the Cowboys and their season, but still, nobody wants to start out 0-3, so at least they can prevent that from happening.
That is true. It's a long season. There's a long way to go. These teams aren't really going to hit their own stride until week 4 or 5 or 6. But some we've seen some signs of some real terrible play and some really good play, and so it's interesting to watch. And fortunately for both of us, we got a pretty good handle on it. Well, there's a Monday night game I think that people are probably going to tune in for.
Oh, I would think so.
The Chiefs and the Ravens, I mean, you got the 2 best teams in football, arguably, and they're going to go at it. I don't know, the Chiefs kind of sleptwalked through their game last week against the Chargers, and they pulled it out, but it wasn't very impressive. But the Ravens have just been awesome so far.
They have. And let's face it, it's the matchup that people wanted to see last year. We didn't get it in the AFC Championship game because Baltimore got derailed by Tennessee. So we're getting it a little late, and it doesn't have as much meaning. But, hey, it's big because, let's face it, I know it's, as you said, it's early. We're week 3. We got a 17-week season here. But if you're the Ravens, you want to not only defend home field here, but, you'd like to be playing your playoff games at home. I know it didn't work out last year. It didn't work out the year before. But let's face it, we don't know down the road if fans are going to be in buildings. What if by January they're letting fans in buildings in Kansas City and you've got 80,000 or whatever they fit there screaming fans? If you're the Ravens, you want that game in your own backyard. So I'm looking down the road in terms of seeding and whatnot. I know it's early to be doing that, but just for the here and now, let's face it, I mean, just a great matchup. Mahomes on one side, Lamar Jackson on the other. Really the faces of the NFL right now. 2 unbelievably exciting players. And as you said, the Chiefs kind of sleptwalked a little. And, boy, Harrison Butker saved their you-know-what. They kept making him kick it, and he kept making it in the overtime. And big win for them. I think the Chiefs were a little caught off guard by having to face that rookie quarterback, Herbert. Let's face it, a game plan for Tyrod Taylor and wound up getting the rookie when Taylor got hurt in the pre-game warm-up. So caught him a little off guard, but no excuses for him. I mean, they're still the Chiefs. I get the feeling that whenever Mahomes needs a big play, he's got Tyreek Hill streaking one way, he's got Watkins the other way, he's got Kelsey. They're loaded for bear, and, at first glance you look and say, wow, you can be taking, 3.5 points with a Chiefs team that comes off the Super Bowl win and hasn't lost yet this year, but I got a feeling the Ravens are going to be mucho hungry for a big win in this game here. So I'm not normally a favorites guy, but right now, early in this week, as I'm looking at it, I could see the Ravens posting a double-digit win here if they play their cards right.
It should be interesting. You mentioned Tennessee in your comment there, and they're going to play Minnesota. What the heck has happened in Minnesota?
Well, they lost a lot of guys from defense from last year to this year. I believe 6 starters did not come back, either free agents or trades or whatnot. And they lost Anthony Barr in the linebacker in last week's game. But their problems, let's face it, Jim, run deeper. We talked about Kirk Cousins, and I don't want to pile on. I mean, to be honest, his receivers dropped a few balls in that game against the Colts. It could have helped him out with his stats, could have helped convert a couple of third down plays. But, I mean, what is he doing? He's taking a sack in the end zone again. He's completing less than 50% of his passes. He's getting picked off. A couple of, have been deflections this year. But they look lifeless right now. And Zimmer, the coach, Mike Zimmer, in the postgame, boy, in that Zoom thing, it looked like his head was going to explode. He was not happy. And I'm going to, to me, that's one of the real interesting games here in Week 3. Tennessee has scraped by and won these first 2 games, did not cover. One of those rare things where a team won both games and didn't cover to start the season. And now they're going to Minnesota, and this is a unbelievably desperate Vikings team right now. But, do the Vikings have the defenders to hold up? I mean, can they contain Tannehill, who's off to a good start? Can they wrap up Henry, who's really been very pedestrian so far? I mean, the Vikings, this is their moment of truth right now. They're at home against a Tennessee team that's good, but they're not great, and the Vikings have to show something. I mean, they've got to get the passing game going. I mean, Thielen last week had 3 catches, was a non-factor. I know they're without Diggs. They traded him off in the offseason of Buffalo, but they've got to get their act together. They've got to spread the ball out a little bit, and then obviously use Dalvin Cook in there. But boy, right now the Vikings just look like a weak imitation of their former selves. I mean, this is a team that won a playoff game last year, and right now, to me, they look like a 4-12 type of team unless they shake a leg.
Well, but basically, the Vikings and the Texans traded some really good wide receivers in Diggs and Hopkins. They're 0-2 each, and the teams they went to are 2-0 each. So I mean,
very good point.
You got to look at what these decisions these people are making. Whether it's personalities or financial, I don't know, but I mean, these decisions in the off season obviously were critical mistakes based on what we're seeing so far.
You're right. And the Texans go into Pittsburgh this week, and let's face it, their team knows when they go into these games, they don't have the firepower that they used to have. I mean, they're hoping for Deshaun Watson to, carry him through, but let's face it, their ground game is mediocre. Hopkins is long gone now, and they don't have a whole lot of playmakers, really. So, Bill O'Brien claims he did it for financial reasons, got rid of Hopkins and brought in Johnson at running back, but I'll tell you what, it's certainly blown up in his face early on, and had a lot of fans down in Houston upset with him in the off season, and now you can see why. Texans, again, just like we're talking about with the Eagles, just like we're talking about the Vikings, they're at a crossroads early in the season. They got to show something. I actually think they're going to play pretty decent in Pittsburgh here. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I'm keeping my eye on that one. Right now they're taking 4 points, and I may have some game day interest for the Jim Hurley Network.
Well, it's interesting. Pittsburgh's a solid team. They got a real solid defense. As far as being a margin team, that still is questionable to me. I mean, just you're looking at them to win by a touchdown or higher. It's just not the style of ball and the way they play. It doesn't. There's some teams that just don't figure to be margin clubs when they're favored.
Right.
They'll stay.
No, I got you. It seems that way with Roethlisberger for a lot of his career, Jim. It seems like they seem to play to the level of the competition, and he as a quarterback, sometimes he has these monster games where he has to, and other times they skate by and get a tight win and don't cover the numbers and everything. And you're right. Then I don't think of them ever as a margin team.
Through history in all sports, you have coaches that go for the jugular, and when they have you down, they just step on your neck and crush you. And you have other coaches that don't do that. They get the lead and they sit on the lead, or they play conservative. And I just there's certain clubs that you can look at and say, hey, if they get you down, they're going to bury you. And the other teams, then you look for the backcourt covers against clubs that don't do that. So to me right now, Tomlin and Roethlisberger and all that they got going on there, they just don't seem like a margin club to me. That's just my feeling.
No, I'm with you on it. I'll tell you what, they got to be happy, though, what they're getting out of their ground game. We talked about it. Connor got hurt early in the season, or early first game, and Snell came in. The kid from Kentucky had a big rushing game, and then last week, Connor pretty much got all the snaps. So their ground game is a lot better than it was. Their offensive line is better than it's been in recent years. And obviously, they have a healthy Roethlisberger. But, I still look at them, and I don't know how many other total game breakers they have. They like Smith-Schuster and whatnot. But you know what? To me, you're right. They're a hang-around team. They hang around when they're a dog, and they let you hang around when they're the favorite. Exhibit A last week against Denver, right? I mean, they were a 6.5-point favorite, won the game only by 5, really had to make a sack at the end. Otherwise, they might have to sweat it a little more. So that's kind of the life with the Steelers. I mean, for as long as time as Tomlin has been there, and I like him as a coach, but you know what? I kind of look at him like I look at Mike McCarthy in his years with Green Bay. For all the years that they've had quality teams, just one title. To me, I don't know. It's a little on the unsatisfying side. I always felt like Aaron Rodgers and McCarthy should have won more than one title. I've always felt with Roethlisberger winning that title back in '08 that they should have won more after that and didn't. So we'll see how these guys go this year. Who knows? I mean, they met up 10 years ago, and McCarthy and the Packers got the edge. I don't know if either of them has Super Bowl talent, but hey, they're off to good starts, and who knows? Maybe they'll be a factor deep into the playoffs come this winter.
Well, talk about coaches. Let's look at coaches. There's some coaches in the league that I feel probably need to be replaced. Quinn, one of them. Gay's another one. But I could go probably 6 or 7 coaches and say, hey, these guys. But where the hell do you find the replacements? And every time you roll the dice and bring in a new coach, you don't know what you're going to get. But you sort of have to, instead of regurgitating these coaches and moving them around in positions where they failed before. You know, some head coaches were really good, supportive coaches, offensive, defensive coaches, line coaches, quarterback coaches, and they moved up to these positions. Fangio is one, a great defensive coach, but being a head coach, he doesn't look like a great coach. Lynn, I don't know. There's so many questions, and when I start to look at the games, whether it's basketball or football, primarily, I look at the coaches first. It all starts there, the attitudes. Like, I like Pete Carroll a lot. He's a great motivator. He's one of the guys. He's been there. He knows the game. But I have that little question mark in the back of my head when pressure gets on in the late in the game. He's going to make one of those strange calls. Like, you just can't. Where the hell did that come from? Kind of thing. Right. Well, and we see that from a lot of these guys. I mean, and I don't know what. Maybe it's the pressure. Maybe you're under the gun, and it's like a golfer. You have that 3-foot putt to win, and you get the yips, and you can't. I guess that's it. I've never been a coach. I've never played football, and But humans are humans, and I think that's what it comes down to. They know the game, they know the sport, they know how to get people prepared, but when it comes down to the pressure time, people crack, and that happens all the time.
Yeah. I'll preface my comment by saying, listen, I know myself. I could never have, you'd never be a head coach in this league. It's got so many demands. And it's such a challenge that you really got to be a special person to not just be a coach, but to survive for years. I mean, you could look through the old yearbooks and stuff and find guys that coached 2-3 years and then you never heard from them again. But I'll say this. You get these coaches, and I think you're right, Jim, lots of times at crunch time, like last 3 minutes of a tight game and whatever, honestly, they beat themselves more than anything else. I've always said, how many coaches in this league are really worth points, and maybe how many cost you points if you really, and not to be critical of them. I mean, again, it's a challenging position, but you've got a lot of coaches in this league that find ways to lose games. Now, I'm not going to get all over the Chargers, Lynn. For the most part, I think he's a decent coach. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's terrible. But, I mean, look at the other day. They were saying it on the air. 4th down. Go for it. If you don't go for it there, you're going to punt the ball back to the Chiefs, and the odds are they're going to score a field goal or touchdown. They're going to beat you. He decides not to take the risk, and sure enough, the Chiefs come back and beat him. Sometimes I think some of these coaches get a little crazy early in the game, but at crunch time they get real conservative, and I think that catches up to them. And I mean, I look at these coaches, and if I was saying how many coaches, 32 coaches in the NFL, how many of them really are difference makers at crunch time, I probably could count them on one hand, and that'd be it, And like you said, Pete Carroll does some strange things. I mean, the Eagles coach Peterson, he does some nutty things at times. You can go through a whole array of them and everything, and find some strange things. McCarthy we talked about, and Pete Carroll we talked about. I mean, there's a lot of coaches out there that just don't give their team enough of a boost. And to me, if you're going to hire a coach, and I used to say this to a friend of mine who covers the Jets, because years ago when they were talking about getting rid of Herm Edwards and Mangini, and I used to say to him, if you have a coach that you don't think can get the job done, and the job getting done is winning a Super Bowl eventually, then you shouldn't have him around. I mean, you've got to have a guy in there that you think is going to lead you to the promised land and win the Vince Lombardi Trophy. If you don't believe in your coach that way, then he shouldn't be your coach. And I mean, again, I can look at the roster of 32 coaches right now in this league, and if I was an owner of a team or a general manager, there's maybe 5 guys that are coaching right now that I would want coaching my team. Now, there might be some other guys on the outside world, assistant coaches or maybe a college coach that I might like. But, I mean, how many guys do you really, swoon over? I mean, does anyone get real excited over Doug Marrone with Jacksonville? Or does anyone get all, charged up like we said about Dan Quinn or somebody like that? I mean, it's just not the case. I mean, I think you and I agree on some of the coaches. We both like the Colts coach, Frank Reich. I mean, I like Vrabel with Tennessee, but there's not a lot of guys. And let's face it, the jury is out on certain guys. The Cardinals coach, we don't know what he's all about yet. You can point to, I've always liked Harbaugh with Baltimore, obviously, but you can find guys and not really know. We don't know what the Bengals coach is about yet, or we don't know what the Browns coach is about yet. But, there's very few difference makers, and I guess what I'm trying to say is late in the game, I don't even want most of these guys making a key decision. I'd rather just the game play out because, like I said, Pete Carroll throwing a bomb or Anthony Lynn not going for it on 4th and short. These kind of moves, you scratch your head.
How about the other night the Raiders beat the Saints? There was a point in that game where the Raiders lined up and they actually kicked a 54-yard field goal, which closed it off. But if you think about the way Breeze was playing the game with the dink and dunks, if you kick the ball there, punt the ball there, and give them 80 yards to go, with the short amount of time there was in the game, yes, you could seal the game, but a 54-yard field goal, which would put, if he missed, the Saints would have had the ball in Raider territory to start their drive, and the dink and dunk quarterback that Breeze seems to be right now could have gotten it done from there. But if you punt the ball away, your odds go up dramatically that you're going to win the game. So what are the odds of hitting a 54-yard field goal? They can't be great. I don't know what they are.
He gave his kicker Carlson a lot of confidence and stuff, but I'm with you. I mean, it worked for the Raiders that night, but I'm with you, Jim. I wouldn't have done it. I mean, you just spelled it all out. I mean, not that much time on the clock. Breeze would have had to go 80 yards, maybe longer if there was a punt that landed inside the 10. To me, you don't make that move, but they did it, and as we said, it worked that time. But for the most part, a lot of these late game, inside 3 minutes to go decisions, very, very quirky. And I'll tell you, my biggest bugaboo with all these coaches is the 2-point play. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm old school, but I don't go for 2 until I have to in the 4th quarter. I mean, you get all these coaches, and they got these silly laminated cards they're looking at. You're 30 seconds into the 4th quarter, you score a touchdown, and you're like, all right, I'm in the 4th quarter, I got to go for 2 because, the card says so. I mean, what are you doing? I've seen games, heck, I can remember a game years ago where Dan Reeves was the coach of the Giants, and because his kicker missed an extra point on their team's first touchdown, he went for 2 the next 2 touchdowns, and they never made it. Sure enough, the Giants lost the game by 2 or 3 points, and he wound up with 18 points in the game because they had 3 touchdowns and no conversions. I mean, it was nuts. You can't be chasing it, but just to see when they do it. I mean, why would McCarthy do it the other day, down 39-30 late? Why do you do that? Kick the point, and then and I know they're going to have these analytics people tell you, well, the 2-point conversion is a higher percentage now than it's been. But you know what? Why be down 2 scores if you don't have to be? It's crazy. So you see a lot of insane 2-point decisions, and I'm sure you're going to see more the rest of the way.
Amen. Jim Hurley Network. That's Hurley. Is that how you spell it?
That is correct. Jim Hurley Network. The toll-free number, Jim, is 1-800-323-4453, 1-800-323-4453. As we said, we're off to a monster start. College, an excellent start. Pros, heck, we're banging them out left and right. Going to have a lot of big winners here week 3. As we said, college football is back with a lot of SEC action. And as you touched on earlier, big week in baseball heading towards the playoffs. Big week in the NBA. We got conference finals going on. Heat, Celtics, Nuggets, Lakers. A lot of fun. It looks like both those series could go 6 or 7 games. We got it all. 1-800-323-4453. Jim Hurley Network.
It's an exciting time, Joe. I'm glad sports are back. Everybody out there that's glad sports are back that's listening to this podcast. And hopefully everybody can stay safe and hopefully the election goes well, the country goes well, the pandemic slows down. We can pray for all that. Joe, I enjoy these once-a-week pods that we do. I think we'll do them every Wednesday now and do the recaps and everything else that we got going on. Thank you for your time today, Joe, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Jim. Always a lot of fun talking sports with you. Thank you.